Hello, Katie and I are doing our chapter discussion on how to get a grant. Our chapter overview will go over the critical skills and competencies, other areas of importance, grant seeking do's and don'ts.
So every grant is unique. What you need is determined by the grant. Before we get too far into finding a grant writer, the image on the right is an example of what a grant template would look like.
So within the critical skills and competencies, the first thing you want to do is get help, especially if this is your first time applying for government. We highly recommend hiring a consultant. There are people who specialize in helping nonprofits and securing government grants and will help you apply to the best grant available. A professional consultant can help you efficiently communicate how your project meet the goals of the grant program. The consultant will also have relationships within the key decision makers, which is great because fundraising is all about building relationships. Number 2, don't apply cold. To be successful in securing a government grant, make sure you contact with the decision maker before applying, ideally securing an invitation and to apply right away. In a government, the decision maker title can change from department to department, but grant programs or desk officers are the most common. Once you find out who's in charge, reach out and ask for information in an interview. Plan for long nights. Every government grant application is unique. Most of the time, they're quite detailed. They require you to use a particular computer program to submit the grant. There's very little consistency. You may find yourself being stuck in the software and being outdated, which is why it's important to have a consultant. If there's any issues, they will have a solution. Be patient and prepared. Receiving a response to your grant application can take months or longer. Government officials, like grant officers, often change positions, so it's important to stay consistent and keep in touch. Don't bother emailing. A phone call every month is way more efficient, creates a strong relationship within your contact and your cause. Once you're approved, the funds take a bit longer than what you expect. You should be ready to start working on your project right away, regardless of how long the funds take to be available. However, if this is not an option, there are groups like the Northern California Loan Fund, which is their website is www.ncclf.org that can help you loan the money for temporarily. Lastly, stay in the loop. Once you receive a government grant, keep in touch. Keep in touch with the people who have developed relationships, especially the grant decision makers, and keep an eye out for additional opportunities. Who writes grants? The grant writer needs to be someone who's strong in understanding of your organization's mission, and that is most of the time that's the person who's running the program. In other cases, it's better to hire a consultant, as they bring fresh eyes to the process in the project. Because this process is primarily about building relationships, staff should always be on point of the contact within foundations. Never ever contact out relationships without building within fundraisers. Take advantage of your resources. There are hundreds of billions of dollars in government grants available to nonprofits in the United States alone, plus much more abroad, since many global cultures support government funding of nonprofits. Take a look at grants.gov and other resources to see whether there are opportunities that fit the work that you do.
So for how to find an outside grant writer, if the organization decides that a grant writer is necessary, there are steps to take to make sure that it's a highly skilled grant writer. If you just determine that an outside assistance is needed, there are a few paths to consider to ensure the right services are secured. Seek referrals from other organizations that have successfully used grant writers. Many times, colleagues will share the names of the consultants that have proven successful for them. And you can also secure referrals from the Grant Professionals Association, previously the American Association of Grant Professionals, and the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Both organizations have searchable online databases where you can find consultants. Reach out to former staff person who is now freelancing. They already know your organization from the inside and which will serve you well. Finally, consider asking the program officer or administrative assistant at the foundation. Some foundations, community foundations in particular, compile a list of consultants they trust as a referral source for organizations. So these are the two websites, and this is what they look like. The one on the left is the Association of Funding Professionals, and the right is Grant Professionals Association. Both of those are great resources to find grant writers within your area. So what to look for in a grant writer? So you must look for somebody who has a proven track record of writing grants that have been funded. Someone who has a strong familiarity with the kind of work central to your organization and familiar with the population that you serve. Someone who has an understanding of your service area and whose consulting rates you consider reasonable for your organization. So the needs of an outside grant writer are fairly simple. They need access to staff, which consists of needing them to answer questions, to address potential inconsistencies in the information that was provided, and to review draft documents in a timely manner. And thorough information is key, and this should not be a problem because the case statement should have already been created, the capacity to deliver has already been evaluated, the program plan is crafted, and the background statement is being continually updated. So a grant writer is not a program planner, nor are they the finance person for your organization. Most organizations make a big mistake in assuming that once they hire the grant writer, they no longer have to be engaged in the process of developing the grant. Nothing could be more incorrect. The grant writer is a professional writer and retained for the specific purpose of completing your grant. Therefore, the staff members who have any part of the program being proposed need to remain engaged in the grant writing process and focused on making certain it is completed accurately. When it comes to the cost of the grant writers, some charge an hourly rate, generally ranging from $50 to $195. Others charge a flat rate depending on their assessment of how much work is required, or will perhaps charge a daily or weekly retainer. The price generally has nothing to do with the quality of the service required, and this is applicable to the consultants charging both significantly higher and significantly lower rates than the majority of their colleagues. It is up to each organization to do their homework on each writer to make an informed decision. So this is a video that we chose that demonstrates exactly what the cost of a grant writer looks like.
Just by rule of thumb, when you're trying to determine whether or not you need to bring in someone, look at what's the time commitment? What are they asking you for? How long is it going to take you to do this? What's the return on investment? Because you all know that as far as grant writing is concerned, if it's a new funder that you're reaching out to that doesn't know who you are, your chances of getting that funding is around 30%, give or take 30% of getting that. So you have to write a lot of grants in order to get some. You got to get a lot of no's before you get your yeses, which is not to discourage you, it's just to help you put it into perspective. Okay, if you are applying for a grant and you don't know these folks, it's the percentage of you getting that grant is significantly low. Now, if you're writing a grant and you already have a relationship or build up some sort of rapport with the funder, then your percentage goes up around 90%. The chances of you getting that grant, it increases. Now, if you're doing grant writing for both, new funders and existing funders that you have a relationship with, then the grant writing piece, then that goes up to about 50%. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about when can I engage a grant writer? Because, and I'll tell you, if you do decide to engage a grant writer, best practice, right? It's unethical to ask a grant writer to work for a percentage of the funding that you would get from that grant, because a number of reasons. But one, you're not even sure if you're going to get the funding for that proposal, and that person is putting in work up front. So to ask them, any grant writer that has a track record a success record, right? That's been around for a while, that's professional. They are not really going to want to take that deal, because it takes time depending on what kind of grant you're asking them to write and how many you're asking them to write. You're saying, oh, well, we'll wait and see if we get this money, if we get this money, we will pay you a certain percentage. No, that's first, because they're already putting their work in up front, and that's not fair. Also, once you get funding, and if you get funding, most of these foundations do not want you to use it for fundraising professionals. So it's unethical if you say, okay, now we've got this funding and I'm going to go ahead and pay you a percentage of this money for the work you put in, because 9 times out of 10, you've written that proposal based off of services that you're going to provide to a certain population, not to pay for fundraising support. So unless you are applying for a capacity building grant from a foundation, and that's very clear in your proposal, it's not expected that you are going to use the money from that proposal to pay someone who has written a grant for you. So we want to stay ethical here. I want to give y'all a heads up that if you're going to engage a grant writer, you need to have something in the budget to pay them. Now, what they will accept and what their rates are will be up to the grant writer, but be ready to pay them up front. Okay? Recap. When do you need to hire?
Lastly, we're going to be going over the grant writing do's and don'ts. And this is the ones that are specific to grant writing. So what you must do is take the executive summary portion of any proposal seriously. In many instances, it's the first section of the proposal that gets read. You need to get your facts straight. Make sure your data is up to date and accurate as possible. You need to follow the grant guidelines. And something else that would help is contacting the funding institution and speaking or meeting with someone about your organization and or program before submitting your proposal. And regardless of the outcome, nurture those relationships moving forward, because they can come to benefit you later on. Think of everyone, funding institutions included. Who invests in your organizations as partners? It will keep you from leaving them out when you should be including them. Don't make your problem statement so bleak that it creates the perception of no hope. All cannot be bleak and dreary, or what's the point? Hope is a powerful motivator and intoxicant that is many times underplayed in the nonprofit community. And don't let a grant writing consultant develop your program plan. They can write the grant, but the staff is the one who needs to develop the program plan. I'm going to end you with this. Every grant is unique. We'll end on what we stated in the beginning of this presentation, and that every grant is unique and the needs change depending on what grant is applied to. With that being said, if the path to hiring a grant writer is chosen, it is vital to do in the best way for your organization.